Okay, back. We're back with the two-parter. Thanks for sticking with us. This is our best of the entire decade, and what a decade it was. Honestly, thinking back to the year 2010, I had a stupid phone still. I didn't even have a smartphone. I didn't have the internet wherever I went. That was it. That's the only difference.
Those are the only differences. Literally everything else is
everything else is static.
Well, our personal timelines is basically 2010. We're starting college, a new phase of life.
Yeah, big.
And we go through that. That's 4 years for me, 5 for other people.
It was only 4 years for me. Don't put that. Don't put that evil on me. We both graduated. We were good. We graduated on time. We were good boys.
Good boys.
And then it's crazy to think. Then 2014 through 2019 has all been post-college for us. And I could even split that up into a few, smaller chunks. So I'm sure we diverge with where we are in life and what we're doing.
Yeah, there's immediate post-college.
Yeah.
And while you were in Cleveland and I was still in Columbus, and then in the later
you went to Europe,
Spain and Europe, and
New York City.
I'm back here in New York. So
and I'm back in Columbus after a jaunt up in Cleveland. So
yep. What a wild decade, man!
I know, right?
Wild. What? Time flies, dude.
You done?
Yeah, that guy's gone.
All right. So, do you have your year count on hand of where the statistics of your albums fell?
I got the stats, baby.
All right. 2010.
I crunched the numbers.
We had the scientists crunch these numbers for us. In the year 2010 was the year for me that had the most favorite albums. So we started off the decade strong.
Yes,
me too. 6 favorite albums from 2010.
I picked a few more. I guess if I was more critical, I could whittle this down. But I have 10, which is tied for my most. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that might be related to starting college, perhaps, considering we both have.
Yeah, that could be it. It could have just been a great year, honestly.
I think it was a great year, but we were also introduced to a lot of new things. At least, I think so.
So I chose 24 albums of the decade. So if we crunch the numbers here, 25% of my favorite albums of the decade came out in the year 2010. So if that might help, because I know you had quite a few more picks than me.
I picked 69. I picked 69.
You had 69 favorite albums. Holy crap! I guess.
Yep. Yeah. So that is significantly more. Mm-hmm. But 10 in 2010. That was tied for the most.
So that's 15%.
Good portion. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good amount.
Okay, but should we go down?
What really stands out from the 2010 for you?
For me, I guess I'll.
Or do you want to just list all of them?
Yeah, I'll go down because for me, it was so hard to put these in any sort of order because I only did choose 24, and it really is these are all stupidly good albums, and I was able to choose my favorite of the decade, which we'll get to. Yeah. Oh, you're breaking up a bit.
I did not do a decade by decade ranking. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if I do, yep, we hear you now. You're good.
I did not do a decade by decade ranking. Mm-hmm. I just did a end of decade ranking.
Yeah,
as best I could.
So 2010, I'll go down my list in alphabetical order, and shout out if these were on your list. But we have Arcade Fire's The Suburbs. Not my favorite Arcade Fire album, but an excellent one. I think I like The Funeral a little bit more. But this was a great way to kick off the decade. In many people's eyes, Arcade Fire's best work. If you've never listened to it. And it sort of exemplifies shit. And I'm not talking more than I wanted to about albums, but it exemplifies kind of where indie rock was in the year 2010, like the late 2000s, early 2010s. You had these huge indie rock bands with like some people's. It seems like the entire job within the band was to like clap and like and toot through their hands or some shit. I don't know. Like it wasn't.
This was kind of the end of indie.
Yeah.
2010s. They were like, all right, this is a lot.
We have like 13 marimba players and some guys like just stomping their feet in overalls. Like, but yeah, this sort of was the peak that. Next, Deer Hunters, Halcyon Digest. Really, if we talked about like a texture album last podcast in the best of 2019, this one has some of the best texture, the best like emotions, the best, just evokes a sense of nostalgia and sadness that I think a lot of other albums really fail to. Earl Sweatshirt. Earl. Was this on your list?
I considered it. I did not end up putting it on my list. I think I had it like 12 and then whittled it down because I've listened to the song Earl a lot, but the entire album I did not listen to, often.
Talk about metamorphosis of an artist across a decade. Like listen to, if you can even find Earl anymore, listen to that and then listen to his most recent EP release. What was that called? I have it right here. Feet of Clay. And just so so drastically different. Such an artist who evolved, but his first album is definitely his most kind of raucous and some would say problematic in the year 2020. But I think it's great. Check it out.
Lyrically, it's jarring.
It is.
It stands out. If nothing else, you will have a reaction.
Yeah, exactly. It's like horrorcore. It is like that's what Odd Future was about. They're about shocking people. It is a shocking album. Gorillaz, Plastic Beach.
Yes.
This kind of rang in college for us, and I've been listening to this recently. Speaking of kind of reliving college, like it's a great album, really, really, really good.
It's excellent.
Sadly, the last really good release we've seen from the Gorillaz, but great features, kind of solidified what their new sound was going to be. Every song I think I enjoy on this. It's a great album.
It came out in March, and I remember that spring. It was a big deal when the new Gorillaz came out. And that album kind of like defines that spring for me.
My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Kanye West.
Yep, that's another one. It's like the Gorillaz, like that kind of defines that year defining, almost even decade defining album. So many great things came out in 2010 that sort of like was not surpassed the entire decade. And I don't know if I can say anything that hasn't already been said about this album. Probably is one of my favorite Kanye albums. Maybe not my favorite of his, but definitely top 3. Let's see. And we did our rankings.
Yeah, we did our rankings. Go check that out if you want a more in-depth. It's crazy we have enough podcasts now to be like, go check this out. We talked about it already.
Dude, we're legit. We're a big deal, man.
We're too legit. MGMT's Congratulations. Did you listen to this one that much?
I did not listen. I obviously listened to it a decent amount. It was popular at the time, but did not make my list.
It did things for me. It was I had been a big fan of their previous releases, but this one felt so much more like mature and experimental, and being in college, like expanding your mind a bit. This felt like a good transition from their previous work to their new stuff, and good album.
Yep.
And that was my last one from 2010. I think that was all 6.
Nice. Let me hit mine.
Yeah.
I'll try to go in alphabetical order too. White Crosses by Against Me. Nah, I did not really listen to this in 2010.
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah, but I listened to it later on, and it's really good. It's a really good Against Me album, and I just love so many of their albums. It's hard to even rank them or kind of put them in lists, but definitely some songs in that album that really stick with me. The second one, doing this on the fly, probably 4x4 equals 12 by Deadmau5.
Okay, that came out in 2010.
Came out in 2010, yeah. And honestly, it's a great album, like all the way through. One of the best electronic albums, one of the best trance albums of all time, in my opinion. And like the My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Plastic Beach, pretty defining album of my 2010s. Plastic Beach by Gorillaz, obviously. Kanye. I also put Man on the Moon by The Legend of Mr. Rager by Kid Cudi.
That came out in 2010. Jeez, that was early 2010.
Yeah, not as good as his first Man on the Moon, but still some really good songs on there for sure. I also put Finger Snaps and Gun Claps by King Fantastic.
I've never heard of that. I've never listened to that. No, yeah,
it's a West Coast rap, kind of like throwback to the kind of gangster rap album. And I did not listen to it in 2010, but later on, I think around like later college years. But it's really, really good. It has like a new sound that I never really heard in a hip hop album before, and I wish I had gotten into it earlier on. But it's really excellent, and just happened to come out in that year. We also have LP4 by Rat-a-Tat. Did you ever get into much Rat-a-Tat?
Yeah, I did like them. Like they blew up in early 2010 with this album. I can't say that it was like my favorite. I loved the whatever the biggest hit was from that, some of the big singles, but I wouldn't call it like, I haven't listened to it in a long time.
Yeah, this was actually the album that got me into them, and it's they obviously have a very unique sound, and it was something very different than anything else out there at the time, and I really enjoyed that one. We also have Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites by Skrillex that came out this year.
You can't ignore that as how influential it was.
Yeah, I mean, I feel obligated to put it on my list just because of how much that was influential and I was listening to at the time. And The Wild Hunt by The Tallest Man on Earth, which is another one that I didn't listen to at the time, but it's one of my favorite of his albums. I would say probably my favorite of his albums, and it's really sweet and beautiful. And then lastly, but definitely not least, Cushion Orange Juice by Wiz Khalifa. Okay. His best mixtape, probably the best mixtape of all time in my opinion.
Oh damn! Seriously?
Yeah, I 100% really believe in that. I'll talk about this album more, but it's I think his best work and pretty much defines Wiz Khalifa like front to back. It's a bomb album, and I listen to it a shit ton even still.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll get back to it though. So that was my 2010 list.
All right. 2011, I had 0 favorite albums from 2011, so I got 0. There was 2 years where 0 albums came in, and that was 2011 and 2019. So I don't have anything to say about it, but I'm interested to hear yours, and maybe I can kind of ride your coattails and be like, oh yeah, that was good.
Okay, let me try to throw some out there that maybe you considered. Watch the Throne.
Yeah, I definitely considered many albums from 2011, but I guess maybe I was too discerning with my list, and I should have put some more stuff on there. But yeah, I definitely liked Watch the Throne a lot, which is now streaming on Spotify. So if you haven't listened to it in a while, go check it out.
Yeah, that one made my list. And if I was being super critical, I could have cut this list down probably.
Yeah,
but
I probably should have.
I know we both listened to that one.
Yeah, I should have been less. I think I was too strict on what I wanted to put on here. But yeah, go. I'm interested to hear what you say.
Also, Define Order by Birdie Nom Nom came out. I think we both listened to that one quite a bit.
That's very true. I don't even have that one saved on my Spotify, so I probably skipped over it. I'm going to go do that right now.
Yeah, that one's a really good one. Really enjoyed that. And we were really into Birdie Nom Nom.
Yeah, that was... And we saw possibly their last American tour ever.
Yeah.
And
I mean...
That was sick.
Yeah, that was awesome. Also, Reptilians by Starfucker. I guess maybe that wouldn't be one of your favorites.
I like Starfucker and I like Reptilians.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't make the cut. But we definitely listened to it quite a bit, and I do like that as an album. Yeah,
and the rest of 2011 for me, which also I put in 10, but if I'm trying to compare 2011 to 2010, 2011 is significantly weaker.
Okay.
But I had to put Camp by Childish Gambino. Just at the time, I was really into that album, and kind of divisive album. I would say there's some people that really, really love it, and they'll definitely critically got shit on hardcore.
Okay. I can't say I've ever listened to it.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but it's interesting just for that reason. It's different. And it's pretty funny. Like he's a comedy writer, so his rapping is funny. But also, Triple X by Danny Brown, and I know you like Danny Brown.
I do, yeah. And that was that his first that kind of put him on the bit bigger stage? Okay. Yeah,
this album definitely put him on the map. And I would say definitely go check this one out if you like Danny Brown. I think this is his best work. It's basically about being 30 years old and being a rapper that hasn't had any significant like wins so far. Like
it's almost like JID in a way. Like
it was really late before he had any success whatsoever. It's about just like grinding, growing up in Detroit, like tough place to live.
Speaking of Danny Brown, I totally forgot to mention "You Know What I'm Saying" in our last podcast, but that's neither here nor there. But that was I want to amend that and shout that out for best of 2019 as honorable mention.
Worth a shout out for sure.
Yeah,
that was a he always does something interesting and different.
Yeah,
and unique.
He's unique. He's hilarious. I do like Danny Brown a lot.
Yeah. And Triple X is what got me into Danny Brown. I love that album. The King is Dead by the Decemberists. This kind of like the winding end of indie, but the concept album, The King is Dead, is really interesting and fascinating. And there's metaphors and recurring themes throughout, and it's just like from front to back is really excellent to listen to. And The Head and the Heart by The Head and the Heart, their self-titled album, is very sweet and beautiful, and was a big deal when it came out back then. I also put Lasers by Lupe Fiasco on my list.
Okay.
Because I really liked Lupe at the time, and I admit I haven't been listening to him much, but that one was his biggest album, at least. For sure, and I really did enjoy it at the time. I also have Subtract by Subtract, which is an album, electronic album that I've gone back to more, and it's just kind of genre undefined. You can't really pin it. Besides, it's just electronic produced. And I think it's pretty influential for the rest of the decade. And lastly, another Wiz Khalifa mixtape, Cabin Fever, which I really like and I still listen to this day. But it ain't no cushion horse.
Is Wiz Khalifa still producing music? I haven't
That's the
heard much from him
thing. I
lately.
think he's still making music, but it's
It's not
not
as
what
good.
I'm into.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I mean, he was early in the decade. He was killing it. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and by mid-decade, he was one of the biggest
Hmm.
artists and rappers.
Yeah, you don't. I haven't really heard much from him or of him in a long time.
Mm-mm. No, man, that
It
happens. Things
happens.
come and
Yeah.
go. That's my 2011 list.
Okay. 2012. I have three favorite albums and
Okay.
one biggie, which we will get to.
Hmm.
But let me look here. The first, and I try not to.
Wait,
I,
can I guess your three?
yes.
Um, Attack on Memory by Cloud Nothings.
Um. No, but I did.
Oh,
Wait. I did consider it. I did. It was.
okay.
It was a contender.
Okay. What about
Honestly, it probably should be on here. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Get Disowned by Hopalong?
Yes, that is one.
Okay. Good Kid, Mad City,
Yes, that is one.
and I know the last one.
You know. Anyway, the one that you
You you,
missed,
you talk about those ones.
the ones that you missed, the one that you missed was Death Grips, The Money Store, and
I don't know. Guess that one.
this, even though I didn't want to put too many albums by the same artist, especially Death Grips, because I I don't know if I would say this is my favorite Death Grips album, but I think it is probably the most well-rounded and best of the Death Grips albums. And this was definitely the one that skyrocketed them into generally mainstream success. I think I like their first mixtape a little bit more, and then some of their other more experimental stuff I've probably listened to more. But the Money Store is a great jumping off point for anybody who's interested in getting into the sort of punk rock, rap, experimental craziness vibes of Death Grips. Let's see. Of course, Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick Lamar. That was one I didn't really listen to when it first came out. I probably heard it at parties and stuff. It was very, very popular. But I didn't quite give it a good shot until maybe a few years ago. And that's where I really fell in love with the album and kind of like came to understand why it was so big and why Kendrick Lamar is considered one of the best, if not the best rapper of the decade.
Even that album's popularity, though, came later, like at least a full year later, before people started listening to it. I vividly remember that it wasn't really 2012 when people were listening to it.
Okay,
It was
it
more
was
like
2013.
2013,
Okay.
2014.
And it's
Yeah.
weird as like a party, like the swimming pools was used as like a party anthem, but when you actually listen to it, it's like very anti like drinking
yeah.
and stuff, and
Yeah.
like it's kind of cringy now to think back of like doing shots to that song. Like it's kind of it makes me want to go bury my head in a hole somewhere.
Or maybe jump in a swimming pool.
Yeah. Hey.
Wow.
On the Impossible Past by the Menzingers, probably not a surprise, and we will probably talk about this one more at length later, but stupidly good album. And also another one that I didn't listen to in 2012. I probably didn't listen to it until 2014. So there is that. And you said Hop Along. I didn't put that Hop Along album. I didn't put Get Disowned on my top list, even though I love it.
Okay.
I put Painted Shut over it. And when I was making this list, I did try. Part of me wanted to keep it to like a one artist, one album list. I don't know why I did that at the time, but Get Disowned is great, and you should not listen to it. It's just not quite as refined, I think, as Painted Shut is. But yeah, that was my 2012 list.
Nice. I also prefer Painted Shut personally. I think it hits more of my rock sensibilities
Yeah.
than than Get Disowned, but Get Disowned is also very creative and unique on it in its own right.
Yeah.
It's new, something that I haven't really listened to before, and what they do with rhythm and timing is really
Yeah, it's what
incredible.
introduced me to Hop Along as a band.
Yeah, yeah, it's what you introduced to get me into that as
Yeah.
well. And I listened to that one later on, but it definitely made my list. And Attack on Memory made my list by Cloud Nothings.
Yeah.
That was another one that you introduced to me around the same time.
That actually
And
got pretty.
it's really good.
That got pretty mainstream success. Actually, I remember hearing that on the radio. At least in Columbus, I did on like the alternative station here. Like they played the "I Need Time to Get Moving" that song. Like that actually got like became pretty popular song.
Okay.
But I do like that album, and it was a contender to get on the list. But like I said, I think I was too strict with things I got on here.
What my criteria was, do I listen to this album quite a bit still to this day, and that one meets that criteria, so that's why I put it on. And I also put album title Goes Here by Dead Mouse on my list. And if I was using your criteria of only one artist per album, I would not put it on here. But it's still really good trance music, and I listen to it quite a bit still. I have Good Kid, Mad City, On the Impossible Pass, of course. I also put the OF tape Volume 2 by Odd Future on here.
Interesting. Okay.
And I didn't have Earl. I didn't have Bastard by Tyler, the Creator, on my any of my decade lists, so I felt like I had to put something Odd Future.
Okay.
Because I was listening to them so frequently at the time, and this tape has a lot of songs that I really enjoy on there, and I don't go back to Odd Future too much. It's kind of like its own separate younger me phase.
Yeah.
But if I was gonna pick one like kind of complete compilation of their work that I like best. This would definitely be the one.
Does that have
And
oldie on it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does that have oldie on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the one that has oldie on it.
Okay.
And a couple other really good ones.
Okay. Sorry.
And lastly, the Tonight EP, self-titled. And I feel like this was a indicative EP of the entire 2012 year. This was kind of the peak of trap electronic music.
Okay.
And this EP is really unique as far as the trap scene goes, and kind of ushered in a new kind of trap, and kind of it brought it into the mainstream quite a bit, and kind of made it the almost like club default type music. So it's a pretty influential EP, and it's short. I think it's only 4 songs if I'm not mistaken, but it's really good. It's honestly something new and fresh at the time, and I still like it and enjoy it. So there's some staying power with it as well.
Okay, cool.
That was my
2012.
2012.
All right, moving on. 2013. For me, there's 4 albums here, so a pretty good year, all things considered.
What? Can I guess?
Yeah. Let me look at. Okay, go for it.
I love guessing.
Okay, go.
I think I can get maybe 2.
Okay.
Acid Rap
You nailed it. Yeah.
and Random Access Memories.
Let me see if I put that on here. I don't think I put Random Access Memories, but it's a good guess.
Okay, that's all I got. What else do you have on?
Okay, so yeah, first off, you missed a big one. 18 Hours of Static by Big Ups.
Oh shit! Did
Yeah.
I take that off mine?
Yeah, that was another one that I was introduced to a year after it came out in 2014. But Big Ups became one of my favorite bands of the decade, and this album kind of still stands tall, I think, amongst all of theirs, even though it's not quite as well put together and cohesive as maybe their later albums are. Just the raw energy of it and what it did for me at the time made it really, really impactful. And so, sad to say,
but that one came out in 2014. Are you doing
that came out
the year?
That came out in 2014.
Yeah.
Not according to my notes.
Technically a release. According to their own Bandcamp, released January 13th, 2014. Very early 2014.
Holy crap. So, wait a second.
Makes sense.
I went off of Spotify dates.
Oh,
yeah.
Spotify.
Which may have had it wrong.
You do. Maybe it was released on Spotify before, but like usually, like artists will release on Bandcamp before Spotify.
Yeah, on Spotify it says 2013. Well,
we'll do both.
It's fine, whatever. Yeah, it's 2013 in my books. Then yes, Acid Rap by Chance the Rapper. I think that probably makes a lot of people's 2013 lists. Not much I can say that hasn't already been said about it. Really fun, great little, I guess it's technically a mixtape. But yeah, it introduced the world to Chance the Rapper. Let's see, going down the list, Sunbather by Def Heaven. And this was one that I listened to way later down the line. But this is a pretty great, like, hardcore, noise rock, metal sort of album. Super.
You mentioned it in part one.
Yeah, in part one of what I've been listening to. So yeah, I didn't really find out about this album until 2019. But super loud, super aggressive. But like the music behind it is like very emotive and almost like symphonic in nature. It has like movements and it's pretty intense. And I've never heard anything else like it. So if you're into like intense music, go check that out. And going down. Yeah, I didn't have Random Access Memories, even though that one was heavily considered. It just hasn't quite stuck with me, and I don't think it's aged quite as well as I would have liked it to. But the last one on my 2013 list was Modern Vampires of the City by Vampire Weekend. Just really great indie album. I still find myself going back to some of the singles today, and while probably not my favorite Vampire Weekend album, definitely my favorite of the decade. So
yeah, I definitely put that one in consideration, but it didn't make the cut, honestly. I had Acid Rap, I had Random Access Memories.
Yeah,
I also had Settle by Disclosure.
Oh, that was considered for me, but I think I listened to it more of like when we were hanging out as a group than like ever on my own.
Yeah. I got the sense that you didn't care for it as much as I did. But I definitely really loved it at the time. It was a big deal as far as house music goes. Kind of what got me into house.
It was big.
In a sense, and I still really like it. I think it's really, really, really well produced, really well done album. I also put Blow the Roof by Flux Pavilion. I didn't have any Flux Pavilion on my list, and Blow the Roof is one of his bigger kind of productions and albums, and it's kind of over the top, as the album title suggests, but I felt like I had to put it on there because I have listened to the song so many times. Something Wild by Radiator Hospital.
Oh shit! I honestly didn't even consider Radiator Hospital, but yeah, they're definitely a band I listened to a lot this year or this decade.
Yeah, I listened to them quite a bit, and I had to put some of their older stuff on there, and definitely Something Wild, I believe, is their first full-length album. And it's just really, really excellent all the way through. Just vivid storytelling, lyrically, and incredibly melancholic. And that one's really good. And lastly, I had Pure Heroin by Lord, which was a huge album for me at the time.
Yeah.
I still really, really love Lord. as a singer-songwriter and musician, and I don't know if anything will ever. She's gone in a more pop direction, but I feel like Pure Heroine was just kind of like in the moment something so special and like really like captured the moment of music for me, and her voice was so captivating.
I can't believe that came out in 2013. That's insane to me.
Dude, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have very vivid memories of driving and around, like nighttime Ohio, middle of nowhere, listening to that album and listening to it in the car. There's something special about that experience because the production, like the bass is so strong in some songs, and then her voice is just on top of the mix.
Yeah,
and just
it's a good album.
It's really good. Anyways, that's my entire 2013.
Okay. And then 2014, the last year, this is the transition year from college to postgraduate life. I only had one album, and I don't think you'd be able to guess it.
Okay, go ahead.
And
it should be 18 Hours of Static.
We'll have to get the record straight on that one. But the one that I do have listed from 2014 is Sun Kill Moon's Benji.
Okay.
This album I probably found a couple years after, maybe in 2016, but it definitely introduced me to the singer-songwriter Mark Kozelek, who's incredibly prolific in the singer-songwriter, like musician kind of circle. And this is probably one of his more accessible albums of the modern decade. But the dude's been producing music since probably the 90s, is as early as I know it, but maybe even before then. But he was with Red House Painters. He's done a lot of solo stuff. He's an incredibly prolific singer-songwriter and incredibly influential to me as somebody who kind of likes to write his own music, and incredibly unique. Nothing else really like it. And the song Clarissa off this album might be one of the top 5 songs of the decade, for me at least. So go check this album out if you haven't already. Very interesting. Nothing else like it.
I got a couple albums from 2014 you might have considered. Transgender Dysphoria Blues.
I did consider it, but I literally haven't listened to it probably since 2014. So,
okay.
No against me on my lists at all, unfortunately, but it was considered heavily.
Okay. I admit that I haven't listened to it front to back in a while, but definitely still some songs on there that
it's a return to form for Against Me.
Yes, for sure. 18 Hours of Static we talked about. What about Never Hungover Again?
Never Hungover Again
by Joyce Manor.
Did I not have that on here? Let me see. Maybe I may have misdated it. Joyce. I probably meant to have it on here, but literally just forgot to write it down. Yes.
Fair enough.
Never Hungover Again is definitely on my list. But I missed writing it down. I'm sorry, Joyce Manor.
Yeah. My favorite, Joyce Manor. And we've played those songs together.
We've played those songs together. Really Joyce Manor albums are so short. Like I usually just lump all of the first 3 together and just because I'll just listen to them all. But I consider their first at least 2, their first 3 for sure, albums kind of as the best of the decade. But yeah, Never Hungover Again is awesome.
I had to put that one on my list for sure.
Yeah.
Then I got another Radiator Hospital Torch song, which is different than Something Wild, less complete, but the songs that stand out from it really, really stand out. Especially at the time where Power... full for me.
Did we see them together, or was that just me and Trey?
I've never seen them live.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, yeah. So I did see them, and they put on a good live show.
That's dope.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking... Here I have... Okay. Honestly, I think I might like the self-titled Joyce Manor a little bit better, which is 2013. Fair. I don't know how I completely missed them. My Spotify must not be quite as up-to-date as I thought it was. But, yeah. I'm sorry, Joyce Manor. You guys are definitely on my list. Sorry.
I used a combination of iTunes, Google, and Spotify to put my list together, so...
Nice. It
is what it is. What else? 2014, The Night Day EP by Zoo. It's kind of like my last... not last, I want to say last hurrah for electronic.
Okay.
But,
is this when you sort of like stopped, you went back to more traditional forms of music?
Yeah, you'll start noticing that electronic is phasing out of my list. And the Night Day EP by Zoo was a big house EP at the time, very popular, got a ton of remixes. So that definitely is a mainstay. I also have a couple rap albums that were really, especially at the time, really huge for me, and probably if I would have been making a list of my best of albums that year, would have been top 2, and that's My Crazy Life by YG.
Okay.
Which is just like maybe the best first 15 minutes of any album of all time.
Okay.
That's how fucking like it's from the get-go was a riot and just like very fun and like gets to the point right away. It dies down in the end, but it's still one of my favorites.
Okay.
And then Oxymoron by Schoolboy Q, which was super popular at the time and was pretty much everywhere around college campuses. And yeah, I think that one kind of that had collard greens on it with Kendrick, so that was a big deal. Kendrick and Schoolboy Q, so I really like that one. And then this is my I put a second Menzingers record in 2014, Rented World, because I have listened to that one a lot.
Yeah.
And again, it's not my favorite Menzingers. I would rank it third probably if I had to do a ranking, but I have listened to it a ton. And lastly, probably my favorite of 2014 was Sound of a Woman by Kaiza, which came out and I felt like encapsulated a lot of what I was really into at the time. It had the electronic, it had the hip-hop, it had just sparse acoustic, it had everything. It was kind of a mixed bag all over the place, but really beautiful. It kind of summed up my 2014 of where I was picking music from so many different genres and was transitioning.
Yeah, it was. This is like a point where I think we both started like we weren't, in a way, like college was eye-opening and expanding in its own sense, but it was also restrictive where it was, streaming, like I think streaming really took off around 2014, 2015, and this is where like I really started to expand my horizons because it was just so easy to.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you nailed it. And this album kind of sums that experience up for me. Yeah. So
Kaiza never really got the fame that I thought that she would.
No, I thought this album was incredible. Like I thought it would be like not only critically loved, but just like popularity wise would put her on the map. And it's really surprising that she never really blew up. She also she was in a car accident.
Okay.
Not too like a year ago, I want to say, or 2, and that put her music career on hold a little bit.
I didn't know that. That sucks.
Yeah. But this is still her greatest work to date, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. That's 2014.
2014. All right. 2015, I think we probably have at least one shared.
Ooh. Do you have 2? Do you have 2 on your list?
I have 2 on my list.
Oh, okay. It's We Cool and Painted Shut, then.
No.
Damn it! Oh!
It's Painted Shut, you are right, as one.
And do you have White Reaper Does It Again?
No, I have
Son of a bitch!
To Pimp a Butterfly. You didn't have that on there?
I didn't. Nah, I honestly did not listen to that all the way through.
Oh, damn.
To justify putting it on my list.
I had it was a struggle for me, honestly. I do not judge you for not having listened to it all the way through. It took me a little bit of time to really be able to digest and love this album, because every time I listened to it, I was like, I want to hear Good Kid, Mad City. That's more easy to get into and much more vivid storytelling, and I really love that album. But there was a point where To Pimp a Butterfly truly clicked with me, and then I was like, now I see. Like, it was like I fucking jacked into the Matrix, and I understood finally like what it was. My eyes were open. But you are right though. We Cool. Wait, where's Jeff Rosenstock? Let me see here. I didn't. So this Jeff Rosenstock unfortunately fell prey to the. And I know I just broke my rule of having both Kendrick albums on here, but Jeff Rosenstock fell prey to the We Cool, the one album per artist stipulation I tried to keep myself to, and I put Worry on here instead, which was a couple years later. But yeah, definitely huge honorable mention for the year. We Cool. I still love that album, and it hurt me not to put it on here. I'm sorry, Jeff. But yeah, Painted Shut, Hop Along, we already talked about, and I would, if you can try, give it another shot. To Pimp a Butterfly really does click, and it's one of the albums actually I think gets stronger as it goes on. So you said you've never been through the entire thing, but I think you're missing some of the best songs on there, which come towards the end.
I have been all the way through it. Just I admit I haven't taken the time to appreciate it, and while it's great, but it's not a recurring album for me,
you.
Which is kind of my main criteria.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
I will say Kendrick, maybe one of the best songs of the decade. Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. From not this is from Good Kid, Mad City. I think honestly I think that was one of the best songs, if not the best song of the decade. So
wow.
Anyway, go ahead.
I would have. I mean, you could pick a lot of different songs from that album.
Yeah.
That would be in consideration. I would probably put Money Trees as my top one from that album.
It's such a good album.
But anyways.
Yeah, we got to keep this ship rolling.
2015, White Reaper Does It Again. That was my first foray into White Reaper, and it's really excellent front to back, different from their later work. But if you haven't gone back into their discography, definitely check that one out. It's excellent. We Cool by Jeff Rosenstock we talked about.
Yeah.
It's really good album. I put my last electronic album in my decades list is In Color by Jamie XX, which is totally unique, completely different sounds. It's all over the place, but it's just beautiful from front to back. And
I always get that confused with Charlie XCX, but they are different.
They're very different.
Yeah.
It's you listen to the XX, right?
The XX, the band, yeah.
Yeah. So he's the producer from the XX.
Okay.
And he came out with a solo album. And honestly, I think it's better than any of the albums by the XX from front to back, at least. I also have Little Neon Limelight by Houndmouth, which is it's a very throwback very blues heavy album, and it has very vivid time and place feels, like can really like suck you into like the Dust Bowl era, for example. Like it has that kind of influence where it's able to lyrically, musically take you to a place, and it's very beautiful. And I also have Sometimes I Think and Sometimes I Just Sit by Courtney Barnett, which was a big deal. Courtney Barnett hasn't been too big recently, but that was the album that kind of brought attention to her. And it's humorous. It's just a funny album. She's really funny. And
yeah, Courtney. Sorry, just got to interject. That's somebody who I can't believe I haven't really listened to before, but I've just been starting to get into her, and I was like, geez, how did she like sail by me without me even really noticing?
Yeah, it's really nice. She's had great lyricism in terms of storytelling, and keeps that Australian twang that's like so cute and endearing.
Somebody's got a crush.
I don't want to talk about it.
Hey, Gordy, you just slide into the DMs.
Me like some Courtney. Right, that's
We're keeping that in. Me like some Courtney. All right, is that your last of 2015?
Yeah, that was my last of 2015. Now 2016, we've done best of.
We have, but this is when the podcast started.
2016. Yeah,
I've got 5 albums, and I don't know if they follow. I can't honestly remember what I put, but I think I tried to stay consistent. 2016 is a big year for me. Lots of stuff happened in my life. I felt very alive in 2016, and I think a lot of my records will show that. It's other than 2010, which is probably the other year of like the most excitement of this decade. 2016 had a lot going for it. First, and I think this was my favorite album of 2016 on our podcast, it was Ruminations by Conor Oberst. I think that's his best output of this entire decade. He's definitely one of my favorite artists of all time, but most of my favorite stuff from him came out in the 90s or the 2000s, so I'm glad to see him make the list again in the 2010s. Worry by Jeff Rosenstock.
I believe, was that your number 3?
It was either number 3 or number 2. I can't remember, but it's an excellent album. It's splitting hairs to decide which one is better. Definitely my favorite Jeff Rosenstock album, and yeah, go check out our 2016 best of list if you are interested. I love the little sort of mini cohesive album at the end that all flows together. You Will Never Be One of Us by Nails, another one that I think was on that list.
Yes, it was.
Incredible, hardcore, just vicious, sort of metalcore music. The Dream Is Over by Pup. I think that is my favorite Pup album to date. That's the one I think I was introduced to them, and I've seen them like 2 or 3 times live, and they never cease to amaze me. And then another one for 2016, which I didn't listen to at the time, and I found out like last year, was Show Me the Body's Body War. If you listen to our part 1 of this, they made my honorable mentions for 2019, and kind of interesting. I will say it's almost like a rap rock fusion, but it's not bad. Like, it's not like the cheesy corniness of like a new metal from the 2000s. But yeah, it's got some hip hop. It's got like an electric banjo instead of a guitar. I've never heard anything like it, and there are a lot of bangers on it like that will get you pretty amped. So go check that out if you haven't. Definitely the best Show Me the Body album that it's out there.
Nice. I think my list from 2016 was number 3, Life of Pablo by Kanye, which we disagreed on, but you can listen to our argument and who wins on that podcast. I believe
who wins
Cardinal. Well, there's a clear winner.
all right. We'll let the fans decide.
Yeah, the fans have decided.
I've seen the comments.
I've seen the comments. Look, I've seen the comments. I believe number 2 was Cardinal by Pine Grove.
Great album. Another, one that I wanted to have on mine, but unfortunately didn't make the cut. I think I like their Audio Tree live album the best.
You've said that before, and that's fair. They're really good live. We saw them one time. They were excellent.
Yeah.
And my number one from 2016 was Malibu by Anderson .Paak, which I
Yep.
mentioned in part one. And you can listen to that for all the reasons that I love this album. It's a lot similar to the reasons I love Ventura. And I had to put Worry by Jeff Rosenstock on my best of 2016. I was wrong to not put it on my list back then.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I remember we talked about it. It like grew on you as an album.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
since then it became a big deal for me and definitely embodies. We've talked about this before too. It kind of embodies what I aspire to be as a songwriter. Like
Yeah.
when I'm writing music, lyrically, this kind of encapsulates what I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's very influential from that standpoint. And lastly, an album that didn't make the list because I had not listened to it up until that point is Best Buds by Mom Jeans.
Yeah.
And this is the emo revival album that really got me back into emo. This
Okay.
is the one, and it's kind of honestly, it's an emo classic, like an emo revival classic.
Mm-hmm.
If this was your foray back into emo, I think a lot of people, this has like a cult following where it
Yeah.
brought them back in.
I speaking of, I wanted to put some modern baseball on here, but I hadn't listened to them in so long that it was hard for me to really do that. But you just kind of reminded me, like I did like modern, I did like the emo revival quite a bit when it was really had some steam.
Yeah, this one still sticks with me. Just some of the songs are so damn catchy, and
Yeah.
it's great musically. Just they're really good musicians, and it's excellent.
Yep.
And that's my 2016, baby.
Okay. 2017. I only had one album.
Okay, we did a top three, I believe.
We did, but when I thought about it as the best of a decade,
Fair.
it was hard. Here, I'm pulling up our list here. What the hell?
I know.
I had Jeff
my
Rosen's.
top three.
Oh, you had Jeff Rosenstock's "Worry" on your list that year as like a. You're like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we did a what we
Yeah.
listened to the most, like kind of like
So
not from that year.
my favorite on the list from our best of 2017 didn't make the best of the decade because it was White Reapers, the world's best American band, which I think was probably on yours, right?
Yes.
After the Party by the Menzingers and this album called Caustic by Primitive Man, which I haven't really listened to since 2017. And one that actually I didn't have on my list at all because I didn't quite appreciate it at the time, but it's really grown on me as I've gotten older. It's Mount Erie's A Crow Looked at Me. Definitely the saddest of the sad boy music I've ever heard. It honestly,
I do remember that coming out.
yeah, it honestly like moves me to near tears. It's incredibly powerful. And,
Is it about his wife dying?
yeah, it's about his wife dying to pancreatic cancer. I think it's some sort of cancer. I'm pretty sure it's pancreatic, but that's beside the point. It's incredibly touching, incredibly moving, and it's about how he deals with. It's like it's an album you never want to listen to a second time, and it's like the most real pain like I've felt of somebody else's. Like I've never met this guy, but the ability to make his music makes me empathize with him and like feel the way he displays his pain in such a way like it breaks you. And I have to give a nod to that as just something that's powerful, not something that's necessarily good or fun to listen to, but it's so powerful. I do, and I have to give it a shout out for that.
Yeah, I definitely remember that coming out. And
Yeah.
it was palpable, the feeling behind it.
Yeah.
My top three from 2017 was The Nashville Sound by Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit. And I still stand by that one as my number three as a revival of country music for me, where I came to kind of believe that country music could still be good and excellent. My number two from that year was The World's Best American Band by White Reaper,
Hmm.
which is just like an excellent, like very fun throwback to kind of like 80s style, but still fresh
Yeah,
and unique.
it was a great album.
Yeah, and then After the Party by the Menzingers, I think was my number one from that year.
Yeah,
Or maybe had one and three switch, but
it was your number. It was your number one.
okay, that
Hmm.
makes sense. It's my second favorite Menzingers album, and it didn't have the same kind of on the impossible past edge that I discussed in part one,
Hmm.
but it's still they kind of really nail like this theme of we're 30, we're still writing punk rock songs, we're still touring.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? Um, and it's just they're the kings of nostalgia punk, man.
Hmm.
And I put a few. I had to put a few on that I've since gone and listened to. The Unihan mixtape by Oso Oso. It's very very beautiful indie rock album, and kind of indie punk, I guess. And I was not privy to it at the time, but I've since gone back, and it's really really excellent. And there's some singles from that album that are amazing that I love to listen to. Um, Forever is a Mighty Long Time by Big Crit, which I kind of got into the next year in 2018. And it's long. It's like a double album, but Big Crit has since, because of this album, become one of my favorite rappers. He's a great storyteller.
Yeah, you talk
And
about Big Crit a lot, at least in
yeah,
our side conversations.
yeah,
Hmm.
he's like inspirational and has that southern rap vibes that
Hmm.
remind me of the 90s, and like ludicrous,
Yeah.
but also is more lyrically dense and interesting. I also put Flower Boy by Tyler the Creator on my list,
Hmm.
which is my favorite Tyler album. Um, and I think it's awesome. Like I remember listening to it so much, 2017, 2018, and it's just like it shifts so much from just being like a beautiful kind of love song
Hmm.
to his kind of like throwback rap. It's just I think it's his creative peak. And lastly, I have Odisea by Ozuna, which I did not get into until later on,
Hmm.
but it's one of my favorite reggaeton albums
Yeah.
of all time. Yep, that's my 2017.
Interesting.
And you never, you didn't put Bastard on any of your lists.
Um, Tyler the Creator, Bastard.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you think about that one?
you know, I honestly didn't because I, I think not. I just didn't listen to it much after it was big. Um,
Yeah. It's a time and a place
yeah,
kind of
I don't
album.
think it's interesting to look back on, but I don't think it was one of my favorites of the decade.
Fair.
And
Yeah, I
I
know
think I
you were
maybe liked
really
Goblin
into
more.
it
Yeah, I mean, I really did.
at one point in time.
Yeah, I really did like it at one point in time, but as I've gotten older, I've distanced myself from it a bit. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't.
I do like Flower Boy a lot, and I like Igor a lot.
Mhm.
But I think that's just us and Tyler growing at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Mm.
For
Okay,
2018, which we did
2018.
a top five this year. So yeah,
Yeah,
what do
wait.
you have? How
Uh,
did you whittle it down?
so I mean, I wish I could put like DiCaprio 2 in there. I wish I could put Bark Your Head Off Dog by Hop Along in there. But I was being too strict. I would give those as great shout outs, and we talked about both of those on our favorite albums of 2018. But the
Hmm.
ones for me
Post.
yeah,
You
and
put Post in
I
there.
didn't think about Post too much because as a Jeff Rosenstock album, I've kind of never really thought like I think that's his weakest of his most recent ones.
Yeah.
Um, especially when compared to Worry or We Cool. Um, but yeah, it definitely is a great album from 2018. But the ones that I had to put as like as considering the entire decade, the only electronic album that made my cut was 2012 to 2017 by Against All Logic.
Shit.
Yeah, did you think about that one?
I should put that on my list.
It's super. I still vibe. That album is a good vibe check. Like I vibe to that one so hard. Great. What? How would you describe? Is that house music?
Part of it is house, and some of it is just something completely unique and different.
It's super interesting and definitely a electronic album that I go back to the most.
Kind of a lot of soul.
Soul. It's super interesting. I like this. I like Against All Logic. His other, I think he has an EP out there too. That's really good. But go check that out if you haven't already. And then my other one, which was what I had already named my best album of 2018, was Car Seat Headrests Twin Fantasy. This was a hard one for me. I think objectively, Teens of Denial is an objectively better album, but for what it did for me at the time and how much I meshed with it, and the lyrical content of Twin Fantasy, I have to give it to Twin Fantasy over Teens of Denial. So I put that one on my list, and I think it's great. Those were my two from 2018 that made the cut. But like I said, go check out our best of 2018. There are a lot of honorable mentions that just didn't make the cut for the best of the decade.
Yeah, I put my top 5 from 2018 on my list, which was DiCaprio 2 by JID, one of my favorite.
Yeah, I still listen to that. I was listening to that like yesterday. Like I love that album.
It's really good. He's an excellent rapper, like one of the best rappers of the decade. I put Post on there by Jeff Rosenstock. Not my favorite Jeff Rosenstock, but definitely a standout from 2018. Vibras by J Balvin. Again, like reggaeton is more of like a singles type music, but from front to back, this album is really excellent. It's kind of like more of a compilation, but it still flows really well and it shows his varied capabilities. Like he can make a beautiful love song, like he can make a club banger.
Yeah.
And it's pretty complete, and I love it. My number 2 from that year was Master Volume by The Dirty Nil, which is kind of along the lines of White Reaper, and that is kind of like a throwback rock and roll.
Do you still hold that up in pretty high regards? I mean, obviously, you put on this list.
One. It's still really good. Yeah. They're amazing live. If you haven't seen them live, you have to.
I sadly have not. I know you've gotten the chance to, and it looked awesome.
You would really, really appreciate them. They just have 3 band members, but they play like studio quality live.
That's
the
awesome.
Guys. Their lead singer is blowing a huge bubble with his bubble gum while he's absolutely slaying the guitar solo.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. They're awesome. Their bass player is always literally jumping.
Yeah.
The entire concert. It's pretty wild.
I put this album on at the gym all the time. Like I do like it. I do like it a lot.
It's a good gym album.
Yeah.
And my number 1 was Golden Hour by Casey Musgraves, and I stand by that. It transcends country, it transcends pop. It's just beautiful. It's like down and dirty, like simple love songs, simple country songs, if you can define it that way. It's just pure. It's pure, like golden, beautiful, personified.
Yeah.
And it's simple harmonies, the melodies, but goddamn, it hits me.
Hits you. Hurt. Yeah. You still go back to it today?
I do. Yeah. From time to time, it's very like specific to what kind of emotions it's gonna like evoke, but when the time is right to listen to those songs, it's still just as goddamn beautiful as it was back then.
A whole year.
And the only other album that I threw on 2018 was Victory Lap by Nipsey Hussle, which I've since listened to a lot, and since he died, but that's a really goddamn good rap album. Front to back, like it's not DiCaprio 2 quality of front to back, but there's just some really, really great songs on there that I would be remiss if I didn't put that on my 2018 best of.
Yeah.
And we're now up to 2019, which
we just did an entire podcast on 2 hours ago.
God damn.
Yeah, it's a long one. But I maybe I need more time away from 2019. Maybe I'll find some stuff that I'll really like. But at the time of writing my list, I did not have anything on there from 2019. But we just talked about it in our last podcast, our part 1 of this. Maybe some things will grow on me more from then, like this Lingua Ignata album or these Chat Pile EPs. But at the time of writing this, which was like a couple weeks ago, or maybe even more than that, nothing had really stuck out to me as like decade defining. So I didn't put anything on there from 2019 yet.
I think this speaks to our personal perspective on doing these like favorite albums of the decade, favorite albums of the year, is that this list is amorphous. Like, we change as people, we change as humans, our music preferences and what we like, what we're into evolves and changes as well. While 2019 was a down year for me, just as I was listening to it and it's experiencing it, that doesn't mean there wasn't good music that came out. I could find myself 10, 20 years later finding things from
for sure
this year and this decade that strikes me in the moment, and I feel like this list has to change. So it's evolving. It's not static by any means.
Yeah, very well put. Yeah, it's not like this is the be all end all, and as we grow and as we change, even just looking at the past decade from like 2010, like how far we've come from there, and our music tastes and things we miss, things we liked then that we don't like now, and vice versa. It really is.
It's just a really fun and interesting exercise to take this snapshot, basically take a camera picture of, how we feel about the decade in review at this time, currently, and it's fun. It's fun. It just I was just reminiscing on some of these albums in the past, like that I'd kind of forgotten about in some ways, but they were in the recesses of my mind that like I still can listen to this and enjoy it the same way that I did. And it was pretty, like, it was really cool. Like, that's a beautiful thing about music.
Yeah, it is. Very well put. Where do you think 2020s are going to go? It's really hard to say. I have no idea what the trends in music are going to be. We saw in the 2010s the death of basically rock music as popular music and the rise of rap music as the pop zeitgeist, essentially. So maybe we'll see a swing back the other way. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe a swing back, but I wouldn't predict that. I think with technology and how integrated into our lives social media is, I would predict and expect more rapid shifts and changes. I think that's gonna kind of become the standard, where I think we do this on a day-to-day basis, where kind of mood and the news, like up and down, like things are good, things are bad. I think that's going to be indicative of music in the future, where we're just going to rapidly switch between what's popular now, it's
going to happen even faster. That kind of terrifies me.
Yeah, I mean, it's, well, for good or for bad. Like, I think a lot of people kind of engage in entertainment that way, where it's like, all right, what's the new thing now? Like, okay, what's a new Netflix show now? What do I have to be listening to, seeing right now? So I think I would expect the decade to reflect that, where there's ebbs and flows rapidly, more rapidly than previously. But I also think the internet, the blessing is that now we have access to international music like we've never
Oh
had
yeah.
before. And I would say, it didn't really come up in our last two podcasts, but like K-pop, it's fucking
Oh, it's
huge right
huge.
now.
Yeah.
Latin music is huge in America, and I think that's just going to happen more frequently,
Yeah. The breaking
where
down of
we become
walls.
more integrated. Like pop music will be world music.
Hmm.
I would predict and anticipate that.
Yeah,
You know?
I can see that. Yeah, like BTS, K-pop, like had a huge decade. Like it went from like a fringe thing that some people listen to like being sold out shows across America and like being on like the New Year's Eve like special musician. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Um, but
yeah,
but I can see that too.
just
And
yeah.
we're speaking of the internet. We're starting to see that already. I mean, it's been happening, but I think it's going to just gain more and more steam where we see these rappers or artists like releasing just singles on Bandcamp or on SoundCloud, and they get famous off of like one or two like huge songs. Like you don't even need an album anymore to be a famous artist, and that kind of goes with like what's hot right now. It's like just putting out these singles after single after single, and you may never even like. I think the concept of an album may die, like honestly, in the next 10 years,
Yeah,
or at least not be
it's
as
really
big
weird.
as important as it currently is. And I see my sister or the younger generations, they almost don't even listen to music as an album. It's almost all like pick and choose, make your own playlist, or just listen to singles here and there. It's the not many people just sit down and listen to an album anymore.
No, for better for worse, technology defines culture, and music is probably just going to catch up to technology, which is Spotify, or mostly that's the streaming choice of many Americans. So
Mm-hmm.
if people find music through playlists, that's gonna continue. I think I would predict. So it'll be, yeah, like I think you nailed it. Less album based music and more playlist type music. Like what is
Mm-hmm.
gonna catch your attention and make you want to re-listen to the song when it's in a playlist. It's gonna be quick. It's gonna be catchy. It's gonna get to the point. I think, yeah, there's a lot to that. And like rock music, it'll always, there will be albums, but they might be on the side. You might have to go out of your way to find them. There's always going to be artists that will believe in something,
Mm-hmm.
I guess or natural, or just like kind of like a base human instinct of storytelling. It's kind of getting back to our roots of humans, and there will always be that. But I think technology, and especially Spotify, will push us in this new direction of playlist focused music.
Interesting. I wonder if the playlist curators are going to be just as big as the artists themselves. But that seems a little far fetched to me.
But yeah, that's kind of like speaking to what's going on in the world now. Like, is the algorithm developer for Facebook one of the most powerful people
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean,
world?
honestly, yeah, the engineers behind that probably are.
Yeah, like they decide what the population sees. I think that kind of happens, maybe not so transparently in music now,
Yeah.
but I think it could be even a big topic of discussion in the next decade of, are we okay with Spotify defining what music is important to us?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Food for thought.
Food for thought.
Food for
But
thought.
I think we are getting a little close to time here. Do we want to have any like wrap up thoughts? So the the decade defining album for us? Do we want to?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
guess we never talked about On
yeah,
the Impossible
yeah. On the
Pass.
Impossible Pass, I think for both of us was like our album of the decade. If we could take
Yeah,
one with us forever, I think for both of us it would be that.
yeah. If I'm on a island, if I'm stranded on an
Yeah,
island, that's my album.
it has just about everything. Incredible lyrics. It like moves. at a great pace. We've done an entire podcast on it, so go listen to that if you haven't already. But I think it came kind of right in the middle of the decade, and
2012. It came early on, but we had both listened to it.
And yeah, for us, it came in the middle. And it ties my world of like college feelings with my world of post-college feelings very well. And I really cherish that album and love it. And the Menzingers have become one of my favorite bands of all time because of it. And I think it's great, and you guys should go check out the podcast where we talk about it for like almost an hour on end. So
yeah, I think you nailed it. It's so vividly nostalgic,
mm-hmm.
and it feels weird and awkward to say that in my mid-20s I was nostalgic for like my time in college.
Yeah.
But I think that's true for a lot of people.
It is,
actually.
Mm-hmm.
That suddenly you have all this responsibility and not the same kind of freedom that you once had,
mm-hmm.
and it's beautiful and melancholic to reminisce on those times. And this album is just pure nostalgia. Like I think actually you said this on that podcast, this is just nostalgia, like a adrenaline shot of nostalgia.
Yeah,
it's just like injected into
it's that juice, that nostalgia juice, just injected straight into you. Yeah,
it really is. It strikes so hard in my mid-20s, and even still, like you can always relive those times. Maybe like happier, but even just times when you really felt alive and like things were new and fresh and different all the time. And just I think a lot of people can relate to that aspect of life. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the many beautiful and incredible things about that album.
Well said. Here's to a good 2020s, man. It's
cheers. Well, it's gonna be a weird decade if we keep doing this, where it's definitely gonna be a very different phase of life than
we're gonna be in our
2010s.
30s. Yeah. But yeah. I'm sure we can't predict what it's gonna be like, and I'm sure we'll have our own. If we literally did do this again in 10 years, like I'm sure we would look back and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I see what happened.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, buddy.
Jeez.
I hope we don't get canceled after that Australia.
Blimey. All right, man. You got any last words before we call it?
Nope. Just enjoy your 2020, listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see you on the flippity flop.
See. Thanks for being with us for the past few years.
Ciao.
Bye.